have allowed the government to declare a war on drugs, because the majority of Americans haven't known any better, and they haven't really understood that all of this is a massive deception. It's a massive profit scheme.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one in the United States, the problem of dangerous drugs.
They can't even keep drugs out of the prison system. You know, they have guys in prison that ODs and things of that nature, even in the home.
What's happening here in America is that our government is inadvertently supplying the hard drugs to the people in this country. Then they're putting the people who use them in this country in jail.
Fixated on terror, most Americans have forgotten they are fighting another war.
Watch a nigga say, "So a eyeball back to your mama Sunday, crying."
But from its inception, the drug war has become the longest, most costly and destructive war in American history.
The drug war is a perfect continuing example of why we will never win the war on terrorism, because it captures the ineffectiveness of the U.S. government, and it captures the fact that it's being used against poor people and not against the people who benefit most from drugs, which are the bankers that launder the money.
We don't send nicotine addicts to jail, and we don't send alcoholics to jail. We shouldn't send drug addicts to jail.
Oh my God! Do you mean they'll legalize marijuana and you can buy heroin at 7-Eleven?
People have to realize that most of our history, we didn't have federal laws against the use of drugs.
$50 billion a year at the local, state, national level, clogging our courts year after year.
I mean, people fighting the drug war need to articulate that what we're after is not blanket legalization, but decriminalization.
Why in the world do we have millions of innocent young people wasting away in prison when the big people who are committing these huge, atrocious crimes are getting away every day?
My own personal opinion, I think the jail cell is better than the rehab.
This year is the 30th anniversary of the Drug Enforcement Agency. It was created by Richard Nixon in 1973, and Richard Nixon is really the creator of this drug war from 1971.
With every passing day of this drug war, the battle line seems to be getting harder and harder to see. And yet it's almost impossible to believe that the same rules apply to everyone.
A lot of us are very uncomfortable with this notion of a war on drugs. So what we attempted to do was articulate a very different concept, which was viewing the drug issue as a cancer affecting American communities.
So you used the wrong word. You said war. If this was a war, we would have solved the war and won the war. This is the greatest country in the world. When we go to win a war, we win it.
We got more drugs today than we did 10 years ago, and that's got to tell you that there is something bigger that's not being shown.
In 1972, when Richard Nixon started the war on drugs, the federal budget allocation was $101 million. Going into fiscal year 2000, the federal budget allocation was $20 billion. Yet there were more drugs in the country in 2000. They were of better quality and they were less expensive than they were in 1972. What's wrong with that picture?
We arrested 14 people targeting high schools selling heroin.
We almost totally eliminated the production of coca.
The drug warriors love to talk about illegal drugs, but what drives the motives to legalize certain harmful and equally addictive substances?
Money. Money controls this whole movement. You have a group called the Partnership for a Drug-Free America. Well, first of all, of course, we don't have a drug-free America, never have, never will. But who are the funders? Who are the main funders, source of funding for the Partnership for a Drug-Free America? Of all things, the tobacco industry and the alcohol industry. They are drugs. They are mind-altering, sometimes addicting drug-free America indeed. But why do they do that? They spend huge money to reinforce the distinction between legal drugs on the one hand and illegal drugs on the other.
I had lost 2 family members and a best friend in a very short span of time to alcohol, cigarettes, and legal prescription drugs. So fearing that I could be next due to my own struggle with addiction, I wanted to find out why the drug war seemed to be such a huge failure. When Nixon started the drug war, I was far too young to understand its implications. Living in white Texas suburbia, growing up in the 60s and 70s, I consider my childhood to be pretty average. An older sister and brother, a stay-at-home mom, and a father who ended up being a top executive of a big corporation. For us, the drug war was something that had no bearing on our lives, and even though my parents were both heavy drinkers, they never crashed a car, never lost a job, never missed a mortgage payment. On the contrary, my parents were pillars of responsibility, symbols of the post-World War II generation who had earned the right to live and drink the American dream.
There has never been a society in the history of mankind, as long as mankind has walked the face of the earth, that has not had some form of mind-altering, sometimes addicting drug to use, to misuse, to abuse, or even get addicted to.
Unfortunately, my brother Kurt didn't inherit my parents' ability to drink hard liquor, and when combined with some of the illegal drugs that the other members of his rock band used, he would often become violent. When I was about 6 years old, Kurt gave me a hit of acid, promising me that I would see green monsters.
You get down, man, with the LSDs, man, and the cocaines and the marijuanas and diet pills, you know, start controlling your mind, start controlling, you know, other things in the atmosphere because of your intoxication results, you know.
As it turned out, it was only an allergy pill, but shortly after, Kurt's behavior landed him in the state hospital, where all the doctors convinced my parents that acid and marijuana had caused my brother to become a paranoid schizophrenic.
The drug problem is devastating to a lot of people. Drugs do not discriminate, they do everybody.
When Nixon created the DEA, they started the National Drug Scheduling. Schedule number 1 being the most dangerous drug with 0 medical value, down to Schedule 5 being the least dangerous with medical value.
We all know what happened to Nixon's history, but we all know that he used the demonstrators to divert attention from his illegal bombing of Cambodia.
Look at the context in which these drugs erupted into the culture in the 60s. We were conducting a vicious war in Southeast Asia.
Where did this policy come from? Unfortunately, I have conducted an inquiry into this, and I have determined that drug prohibition laws came for reasons of racism, empire building, and ignorance.
I mean, in Nixon's mind, I think drugs were associated with not liking Nixon.
Nixon's new drug scheduling put marijuana in the most dangerous category, side by side with drugs like PCP, crystal meth, and heroin.
People in the United States didn't have any idea what marijuana was, but it began to be associated with those Mexicans. Drug prohibition for cocaine was basically passed in order to protect white women from black males. And the history will document this.
Talking to people in the ghetto, one dealer's name always came up when talking about crack's popularity. Freeway Ricky Ross became known as the Walmart of crack. Ricky's story has become as legendary as Tony Montana and Scarface, but with an even more bizarre twist. Ricky, who is currently serving time in the Texarkana Federal Prison, is scheduled for release in 2013. The prison denied me access with a camera, so I started interviewing Ricky over the prison payphone.
You know, a lot of people don't know what it's like to come in the house and there's nothing to eat. You know, to go to a supermarket and walk through the store and eat out of the cookies and things of that nature just to have something to eat. Cocaine came along, you know, and gave me a new horizon, I would say.
There's a new epidemic. Smokable cocaine, otherwise known as crack.
I remember clearly one day in the late 80s, every single news network simultaneously running an identical news alert about the new, incredible, powerful, unbelievably cheap drug that was to sweep the nation.
This is crack cocaine.
Soon, every single black person living in the ghetto would sell his own mother for another hit of crack cocaine. It was like watching a strategically engineered ad campaign. Talk about perfect product placement. Did we mention it's cheap and strong and very addictive? Only $5 now, so stay away from it.
Let there be no mistake. This stuff is poison.
Crack cocaine epidemic. Crack cocaine epidemic.
Few street-level dealers have ever reached the legendary status of Freeway Rick, with distribution that rivaled many Fortune 500 companies.
Freeway Ricky Ross was a young, aggressive, savvy, streetwise marketer who started selling cocaine, and then suddenly some major sources opened up for him.
At the height of Rick's operation, he had over 40 full-time employees in Los Angeles alone. He had cook houses, cash counting houses, rock houses, decoy houses.